about how schools have failed to teach kids to read and the Steps to Reading workbook series, which enables anyone to teach a child to read. She lives with her husband in Manhattan and Amagansett, New York, and is the proud mother of two adult sons, whom you can meet as young children in her memoir. Welcome to the Teacher Rockstar Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hiles. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing why early reading skills are essential for student success with our guest, Irene Daria. Welcome to the show, Irene.
Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
What exactly do we mean by early reading skills? I mean, what are the specific components?
So, early reading skills, really, it's funny, they're called early reading skills. The term really should be pre-reading skills. They're skills that you want to get into place in a child before the child is actually beginning to learn how to read. And research has identified six important components of that. So what those are, and many of these happen naturally in many homes. The first one, and probably, I don't want to say most important one because they're all very important, but most important for developing a child, a love of reading in a child, is fostering a love of books. The research calls this print motivation. This is a very official sounding term, but you want the child to love reading. And the way you impart love of something in a child typically is by making it enjoyable and fun for the child. So this is something that, most parents who would be listening, I think, to your podcast do naturally. Read to your child. Many parents make this a bedtime ritual. That's what we did in our home. So I used to be a writer before I became a psychologist. Published 3 books with big time publishers like Random House and Simon and Schuster. Was a journalist. Loved to read. My child loved to read. So the way I fostered that, and the way research says you should foster that, every night we read a story. If he loved a story, we read it over and over and over again. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, I know how that one ends. It's like let the child, drive what you are reading to him. Do include, this is jumping ahead a little bit in the development of reading, but do include nonfiction in the stories that you choose. A lot of parents typically choose only fictional stories. Choose nonfiction because that will develop a knowledge of the world, and that affects a child's reading comprehension later. But most important thing, read with your child and make this a time of warmth and joy. Do not make this. And teaching is and can be joyful. I don't mean to make it sound like teaching a child something isn't enjoyable, but do not make this bonding, lovely time with your child a lesson. Keep this bedtime reading. Let the child be the recipient of this warmth and joy of the story. This is not the time to be saying, oh, look, we read from left to right, which we will do later. You do want to teach your child that. Not at bedtime, not when you are having the special moment. It would be like going to a movie theater and having someone point out how the director, cut all the scenes. You just let the child absorb the quote unquote movie, the story. Have that be a joyful moment. So number one is fostering a love of books. So we have love of books, vocabulary, and then number 3 is something called phonemic awareness. That is, the child needs to be aware of the sounds that he or she hears in spoken words. Number 4, and this pairs very closely with phonemic awareness, is letter knowledge. So this is a fun way of I'm going to give you the how-tos mixed in with the what they are, because I think it's just nice to know how to develop all of this. Phonemic awareness and letter knowledge, we're going to pair those together. is something like, you can play a game like I Spy. I spy with my little eye something that begins, and often parents will say with the letter T. Don't do that. Don't say with the letter T. Say, I spy with my little eye something that begins with the T sound. You want to enunciate the sound that the letter makes. That's the phonemic awareness, the awareness of the sound. And then make, plan to, okay, today we're going to play this game with letter T, or today we're going to play this game with letter M. Have the letter written on a card. So when you say, I spy with my little eye something that begins with the T sound, you're going to hold up the card that has the letter T written on it, so the child pairs that sound with the letter. Something else that's very important, parents and teachers do this all the time, all the time. They will teach children the sounds that letters make without ever explaining to the child what letters are. They will say, oh, A makes the A sound. And some children will accept this, right? They'll be like, okay, this symbol that my teacher wrote, this squiggle, that's an A, and that letter says A. Other children will think to themselves, that doesn't make any sound. That's just something that my teacher wrote on the whiteboard. What is she talking about? And they don't really get it. This is a function research shows of something called information processing. We all fall in the world, in human nature and human psychology and makeup. We all fall on a continuum of various skills or methods of doing things. And with information processing, kids are either, they need to go, it's sort of holistic or analytical, where you need to go step by step. If someone is holistic, they're like a big picture learner and they will intuit things and just go with the flow. If someone is a little picture learner, that's the layperson's term, they need to have everything explicitly spelled out to them. So you want to come right out and say to a child, in the old days, people just talked, they didn't write things down, and someone then came up with the idea of writing down what we were saying so that people began traveling and going places, and they wanted to share stories with other people and be able to write things down. So we came up with letters that stand for the sounds that we make when we speak. Really explain to a child what letters are. So I spy with my little eye something that begins with a T. You hold up the T. You're teaching two things at the same time. You're teaching them to hear the sounds, individual sounds, at the beginning of a word at first. Later on, you move on to the end of the word, and then you can move on to the beginning of the word. The middle of a word, like k, at. Always pairing the sound with the visual representation of the letter. Okay, and then 5 and 6, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at everybody, but is this all right, Steve? Everybody's with me? Okay, number 5 is what research calls print awareness. You want kids to be aware of how books work, that they go left to right, that you read left to right, that you're holding it, which way is upside down, and the front cover, the back cover. This is something that you can explain to your child before you start reading to him or her at bedtime. You're going to have to explain this once or twice. This isn't something you're going to do over and over again. So you decide, when the best time to do this is. And as your child gets older, I'm talking about, the beginning readers, as they get older, as they are, watching the page more closely. In the beginning, your child is just going to be looking at the pictures and not looking at the words. As they begin looking at the words, you can use your finger to show, what words you're up to, what words you're reading. And then number 6 is what's called narrative skills, the ability to tell a story. So when you speak with your child, and again, now we're talking about older pre-readers, let's say around 3 years old, you want them to be talking to you in full sentences. Ideally, often you'll find many young children, they'll tell you a story and you'll sometimes will be like, what are you talking about? Because it'll be out of sequence. You want to sort of gently nudge them towards using what's called a main idea sentence, like answer a question with a sentence and then give all the details that sort of prove that sentence. You want them to be able to retell a story. And the books, there are the books that, I can't believe I'm saying this because in I Didn't Believe Him, my book, there is a scene where I'm horrified because my first grader brings home a book from school that has no words in it. And he's sort of playing a little joke on me, At this point, I realize he has no idea how to read. And he says, oh, Mommy, I have a favorite book. I just love it. Do you want me to read it to you? And I get all excited because I think my son really does have the favorite book and he's going to read it to me. And he pulls out a book called One Frog Too Many, and he starts, quote unquote, reading, and there are no words. And I was just horrified. Now, in first grade, kids should not be bringing home books with no words. That should not happen. But preschoolers, little kids, absolutely, you can get those stories that are just visual and it's clear what's happening. The story is progressing, and you can have your child tell the story of what he or she sees happening in the pictures. And that will help develop narrative skills, the ability to tell a story.
What I want to ask you next, I know I've talked to people in the past, Irene, that said, well, we're teaching I think our kids should just play and not worry about stuff. And we're trying to put all this stuff on them at such an early age. So this leads me to this question. What age should parents and educators start focusing on developing reading skills? I mean, some people think, well, it's 2 years old. That's too young, or we should wait till they get to preschool age, 4 year. I mean, yeah, 4 and 5 years old. I mean, what's your sense on that?
I don't want it to turn into a job for anyone, not for the parent and not for the child. But you definitely, these are things that parents do naturally. Most parents who are listening, I think, to your podcast, read to their kids. They talk to their kids. They explain things to the kids. So these are things that happen naturally at home. What does not happen naturally at home is the phonemic awareness part, the knowing the letters. And I would say start that at age, definitely by 4. You can start it sooner, but definitely by 4, because by 5, you want that to be in place for your child. I was one of those people, and I was getting a PhD in developmental psychology, mind you. It is absolutely correct and true that children should be playing. They should be playing. They should be socializing with other children, because that's very important for school too, to be able to get along with other kids. And they need to enjoy their childhoods. They learn about life through play and through imitation. So absolutely 100%. But doing these little pre-reading skills will not take away from play. I'm not saying spend an hour and a half every day doing this with your child. We're talking 5 or 10 minutes. Add it into a day where you work on this with them. And I was one of those parents that did not. My son started kindergarten not knowing the sounds of all his letters. He was one of the few in his class who didn't. His preschool teacher wanted to work with him on letter sounds. She babysat for him, and I said, no, I just want him to play. Don't make my mistake. And really make sure that this is in place when he starts kindergarten.
Can you tell us what are some effective strategies for teaching early reading skills to young children?
Make it fun. We were talking about how important play is. Making it fun is imperative. When the child's had enough of this never happened in our home actually, but if you're ever reading a story and the kid says enough, stop. Usually it's mommy read more, right? But make it fun. That's why I Spy with My Little Lie. That's a game. You're not sitting with a notebook teaching. You're playing. Or you can play, another game that I love is, when you hide something and then you tell someone hotter or colder if they're looking for it, and you say hot, 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 that they're getting close to it, or cold, 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 they're far away from it. You can do that with letter sounds. You can hide the letter M, right? And then you make the sound of the letter as they get closer to it, you get louder. So, right? And if they're far away, quiet. So they love that game, by the way. So you see what I mean? It's fun, it's play, but they're learning an important skill.
Well, how important, I think you already alluded to it, but is the role of parents in developing early reading skills?
Imperative.
And what specific actions do they need to take?
Exactly what I detailed. I know families who are reading to their children from birth. Wouldn't be me personally. Do you know what I mean? I would be holding and cuddling. I wouldn't really. But if it brings you joy, this is an important thing about parenting. There's no one right way to do anything. You need to follow your heart. If it brings you joy and makes you happy to read to your newborn while you're holding your newborn, do it. do it, right? And if it doesn't, don't. Just, it's so exhausting being the parent of a baby. Take care of yourself, take care of your baby, and do what is in your heart to do with your little one.
Okay, so Irene, how can folks connect with you? And obviously, I know you got a new book. It's out, so please share.
So I didn't believe him. Tells the story. It has the three prongs to it. It takes you behind the scenes of a very well regarded school and shows you exactly what teachers were doing wrong. Well intentioned, kind teachers. People say to me, "Aren't you angry with them? Aren't you angry with what they did?" And I say, "No, they were doing what they were trained, to do." But what a tragedy. But you'll see exactly what happened there. There's some early reviews have come out, and one former teacher who now makes materials for teachers to use in their classroom said, she found the book both horrifying and inspiring. Horrifying because she saw herself in the teacher. She saw herself using those balanced literacy methods, which she now knows didn't work. Some things in balanced literacy, like read alouds, are great, but just doing a little sprinkling of phonics here and there, not a good idea. And inspiring because it shows you how we overcame, how he eventually became an outstanding student, a stellar reader, and went on to really great academic success. But I have to tell you, if my little kid, I think this is why I wrote the book, if my little kid didn't finally find a way to get through to me, I told him to trust his school. I think I want parents to know, not that they should not blindly trust their child's school. And teachers, I think it's important for you to hear that. And I have been surprised at the support I am getting from teachers on Twitter, for example. I was afraid teachers wouldn't like my book, right? Because I'm pointing out what was done wrong. The support that I'm getting is amazing, and one of my messages is that parents should not blindly trust their child's school, and teachers are saying yes, they should not. Absolutely, they should not. They should trust if the trust is earned, right? But they should ask questions, and teachers and parents should work as a team to support the child together. Oh, sorry, Steve, I don't know if I didn't fully answer your question. So to get in touch with me and to learn more, my website is stepstoreading.com. There you'll find out more about me. There's a video on how to teach a child to read. There are free resources to download. There is information on my workbooks that are great for schools and for families. There's my email if anybody has any questions. I would love to, help and answer in any way that I can. So that's stepstoreading.com.